That seemed a little shorter than last time. Power Girl's muted.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Now I'm not. Thank you so much. Hello, hello. I guess are we gonna get an intro, Liberty?
No. Okay, we're live, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the Liberty Cowgirl Network. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Man, we're live, everybody. Yeah, we have an action-packed show today, and a lot of technical issues because Liberty's.
Well, can't hear a thing she's saying, and looks like it's just the two of us that have any audio right now. Everybody else is muted.
Okay,
Yeah,
there we go. Now I got the hang of it.
There you go. Power Girl's on. Liberty Cowgirl, you're muted still.
All right. Well, hello, guys. Hi, everybody out there. And I'm just going to get started since I have a mic now. It's the Liberty Cowgirl Network, and we are in the spotlight today with Colonel Darin Gaub and General Blaine Holt. We are very, very excited to have you guys here and to hear all about your Restore Liberty program. I know that you guys are busy men, so we're very, very grateful to have you here and to take that time. We've seen you all over Fox News, and you guys are really the go-to right now for everything that's happening all over the world with all of the military maybe not all of the military operations, but with some of them, some of the most important ones. So I can't wait to hear from you guys.
Yeah, we're both very blessed to be here and excited to continue to spread the message of liberty, freedom, hope, and all the things that are happening out in the world right now. Some good, some bad, but I guarantee you there's a movement afoot, and things are looking pretty good from where we're sitting.
Wow. Definitely, I can definitely feel it. I'll tell you what, I was just saying the other night that this beast system may look like it's really looming in, but as far as I can see, it looks like it's crumbling to me. So whatever you guys are doing behind the scenes, first of all, we thoroughly appreciate it, and second of all, it's obviously working, because it might not be obvious to the
Sorry, guys. Somebody took over our controls here on our show.
I do love that.
Liberty Cowgirl and Cowgirl.
Relax, guys. Boy, I'll tell you what, we're just trying to really make you feel good about coming in these amateur patriot podcasts. We really do appreciate your patience as we work through these technical difficulties. I know it's probably a far cry from Fox News. I'll tell you that right now.
Every outlet matters, and we're all
We appreciate
part of the same fight. Big or small, doesn't matter. And I think my wingman would agree to that.
I would agree with that, and it's a pleasure to be with you both. We sometimes Darin and I are both aviators, and sometimes you take off in turbulence and you manage to climb out of it, and then you get to a smoother altitude. But what I would say, in addition to Fox News, which Darin has just been brilliant on, I'm on the Under Attack, Under Fire Newsmax. I'm a contributor there, and Newsmax right now is actually on the front battle lines of our first rights, our first freedoms. The AT&T and DirecTV mafia have decided it's in their best interest to do what they did to OAN last year and deplatform Newsmax and deprive 13 million viewers of having access to what I believe, certainly I believe that because I signed with them. The Truth, a great team, always wanting to call balls and strikes. And the folks that don't believe in our Constitution or our liberties are actively working to squelch outlets like that. And so, yep, I'm a Newsmax guy, and that's why you can't see my face today, because I have a little deal with them. They only get video from me on Newsmax. But again, it's a pleasure to be with you. And back to what we started this conversation with, Darin and I are in this wonderful front row seat where we get to see from the Restore Liberty platform all these groups, and I don't mean thousands, I mean millions across the nation who are waking up and they're understanding what's really happening and what's at stake, and they want to grab a shovel and they want to find out how they can help. And it's just every day it's a new thing. And while we see all the bad stuff in the news, there's a lot of good stuff. And I'm not just talking about conservatives and, some of the Republicans and that type of thing. There's a lot of disenfranchised Democrats and liberals who are waking up going, I didn't sign up for this. This is not my brand of crazy. And so really it's about we, the people in America, versus them, the global elites who have no allegiance to really any country. And so Darin and I are locked in step with this amazing organization that stretches across our nation called Restore Liberty. And we've just been at it ever since. And it's just been great.
Well, thank you for that. I'll tell you what, I'm a big fan of Newsmax. I was wide awake when all of this hit, and I saw the wipe that happened right before the election that I'm sure had nothing to do with anything. But on October 15th is when some of my very, very favorite content creators were completely wiped off YouTube. And it was, right around that time that we started to see the rise of actual, like you said, Newsmax and OEN and those kind of networks. And it was so heartening, because how would we have even gotten the news otherwise, to see that rise in the midst of the wiping. They just wiped everybody out. So, and we are still fighting to get that ground back, right? Wouldn't you say, Colonel?
Yes. And I'll say more than just that, but
please.
I like to use this phrase when I'm traveling around the country called, you live by Twitter, you die by Twitter. So, I mean, if one person can turn off the water to your house, one person can turn it back on too. So with media, I would rather have 1,000 outlets competing and passing a great message than one that's passing a great message when you can turn that switch and that one goes away. This is different. This is like trying to stop a dam from leaking that has 1,000 cracks in it. Yep. And I love being able to observe it and be part of it, because you talked about Liberty Cowgirl Network being a small podcast. There's no such thing. Everything and every exercise of free speech is huge. And and you know this better than I do, there are so many people like you across this country, even in the deep blue states, whatever you want to call that, who are saying, you know what, I just want to be part of the message. All of you together, one person like me singing is a terrible thing to listen to, but all of us singing together makes a wonderful choir.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. Absolutely. I'll tell you what, I often account it to the seven-headed hydra that, you can go ahead and cut one of us off, but, two or three more are going to pop up. And that's why this networking, that Liberty Cowgirl, the peace and unity movement, I'm such a huge fan. And I jumped on as soon as I found out about it, because to me, coming from where I come from, I have a real understanding of what happens when you cut the energy off and how powerful that is. You don't think about the power company until you turn the light on and it doesn't come on. And so that's the business that I come from. So I totally get that. How about you, Liberty? Did you get some audio there?
She's still muted.
You're muted. That might be part of it. No? Okay.
I think she's saying for now, keep going.
Okay, we'll just keep going. Sounds good. So anyway, yeah, I absolutely think that's my biggest driver here is I'm so excited to network with all these amazing patriots. What I've seen in the last 6 months that we've been, or, I'm sorry, 6 weeks, 6 weeks, Liberty Cowgirl and I started working together right at the end of the year. Actually didn't even start to work until January 6th was our first day working together, ironically. And what we've been able to do in 6 weeks together has just been phenomenal. Just the fact that we're even sitting here with the spotlight on you two gentlemen today is if somebody had told me that I would be here, 2 years ago when I was, my life was turning upside down with this, this new normal that for us, you talk about deep blue states. I am here in California, born and raised, and yes, a walkaway Democrat. And so I have a very keen understanding of the deep blue state and really being behind enemy lines. I tell people all the time here in California, we actually are behind enemy lines. And, my personal story is a testament to how real and visceral this silent war is that, like you say, so many Americans are not even aware is going on. So, I think that's the hardest part of it. So when we see men of renown that come, I'm sure this is making you uncomfortable to talk about you in these ways, but to see men of your stature come and speak to us in this way and we can get the download directly from you. It's so powerful because we all work so hard, like you said, to be that presence, even in what little way we can do it. So we do.
I think you make a good point. But when we talk about men and women who are sitting on the sidelines with in abject horror as to what's happening to their country, I'm thinking about the 17 million vets who have put it all on the line, signed for the unlimited liability clause, and said, listen, if my country needs me to be there, I'll be there. We can all argue about whether the wars we've been pushed to were just, unjust, justified or not. I have my own thoughts on that. But what I can say is that, we all took an oath to the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that is an oath that the vets, I think most of the 17 million would say is an oath without expiration. And so when Americans go to bed during these hard times, during these very, very scary times, they should understand that there are so many people, and it doesn't just have to be the vets. It could be the first responders, the firemen, the EMTs, all the people. It can be the folks who run your water treatment plant down the street in your town where you live. But there are folks who work so hard to keep the things that get America going and keep it running. And they know things are not right. But when we come together and when we push back together, we're so much more powerful than some policy wonk who graduated from Yale and has determined that he's going to get us into a war because he thinks it's a very clever idea. and for those of us who have worn the uniform, we would be the most hesitant to get involved with armed operations anywhere. But we also understand what's involved with that. And so I know so many of these stories and these headlines around the world, here at home, are disheartening. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, we really are going to walk through this fire to get to a better place, and we are going to eventually overwhelm them. And there's nothing they can do about it, which is, why I wake up in the morning with a smile on my face. I will call out the crises of the day. but I'll try to put a little humor to it, and I'll be a little affable about it, because I find that the folks who would tear up our Constitution, spit on it, and walk away, those are the folks that are nervous. Those are the ones that wake up in a terrified, sweaty panic that their ultra complex plan, fashioned mostly by Klaus Schwab and the kids at the World Economic Forum, is just too complicated to manage. And you can tell it's too complicated to manage because everything that flies out of their mouth these days is just nonsense. It's like, oh, we think we shot a missile at a 13-inch, $13 balloon. It's like, listen to yourselves. you know, I mean, that's what tells me, aha, we're doing well out here in the country.
We got him on the run. We definitely got him on the run. That is for sure. I wake up every morning and see the news and watch what's going on out there. And I agree with you 100% on the veterans. I'm not a veteran. I do. Most of the men in my family are Navy men. But I'll tell you what, I can't imagine. And I can't imagine what they're going through, because I know what I'm going through watching it. And I'm always grateful to see oath keepers that are keeping their oath, that are doing the right thing, because these are dark times. But at the same time, it's such a powerful time to be alive and to be active in this fight and, doing whatever little part. I mean, I remember being a kid in 3rd grade singing patriotic songs, with all the gusto you can imagine. And now here I am, fighting in whatever little way I can. And it's just so powerful. And to be, now sitting in the spotlight, sitting in the Liberty Lounge with you guys here, this is incredible to me. So I'm just a little bit starstruck, so you'll have to forgive me. But we do appreciate, we appreciate everything you do.
Listen, I think we're all a lot starstruck, and I can't thank y'all, for enough for being here today, for coming straight into the heartland. For, like you said, there's thousands of podcasters on the internet, but yet you're sitting here on our show today, be it the technical difficulties or not, we're going to get up in it. There's a lot of people that have a lot of questions. We're out there, we're networking across this country. Colonel, I think you saw when you were on the show last time, I mean, we've got freedom fighters from all over the nation coming together, all on these channels that we got here. And we, of course, know, firsthand, Power Girl just had a channel banned yesterday, how we're trying to logistically maneuver all these channels in order to get out the words of the patriots, the message that needs to be delivered to the people. And trust you me, they will stop at no end to shut us down from getting that message out. And the message is real and clear and out there. But listen, in looking for answers to all of this, again, I want to go back to Restore Liberty, because that's what this is all about. If we don't connect that chain in the link, restoration is not going to happen, because we have a lot of disconnect all over this nation right now. So this organization that you two put together right here, to me, and I'm going to be touting this all across the country, Restore Liberty. This is what is needed. This is what is necessary. And if everybody goes to restore-liberty.org, you really need to go there and plan on spending a good hour, because they've done such a good job of just spelling everything out from start to finish on how to affirm your oath to America, looking at a consent declaration that allows you to do that, looking at the Federalist Papers for the 21st century, and learning about state directors so you can get involved locally in your state. Looking forward to having Cynthia from Restore Liberty on the Liberty Cowgirl Network next. I've been in contact with her because there's a lot going on just in our state, but we're out here and we're trying to cover the national scope of what's going on. So in the spirit of Restore Liberty, I was watching, since you guys are all over mainstream television right now, there's a lot of articles out there, and I was very touched about an interview, General, that you did the other day, and I'd like to hear more about it. You were telling your story about how you went over to Kyrgyzstan. Is that what it is?
Kyrgyzstan,
Where
yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear that story, because I think it's important for the American people to know that you all are still in service to your country, even though you're officially retired. You're out here, boots on the ground, trying to educate the American public on how to restore this nation. And I want people to get a good understanding of the experience, the dedication, the integrity that comes along with you all as you take this journey out there through America, trying to put hands together. What was it like, from your standpoint? And of course, we're going to save all the military updates till the end, of course, because I want to get out to all this other stuff first. But what was it like for you, sir, to go completely over into another country and have to restore the entire nation?
So this is the year that changes my entire life. I was an airlift pilot. I've been to 135 countries. Spent part of my childhood in Hong Kong. So very international outlook. But I went to Kyrgyzstan and I was assigned to the wing there as not just a guy who's going to run aerial refueling operations to Afghanistan to protect our folks on the ground, but also to provide logistics and support. And that's how the assignment comes to me. And I had been there back and forth. Truth be known, my little brother, who ended up retiring as a 2-star, which means he's shallow and petty because he hung in there for one more star than I got. But he's the one, when he was a captain, who actually went and bought that base. And I show up there with the attitude that I'm going to whip this base into shape. I know that the campaign here in 2009, new commander, General McChrystal, they have high expectations about surging forces coming, and I'm going to whip them into military operational perfection in my brain. I get there, and that idea lasts about 2 weeks. So with anything, no great plan survives contact with reality. And so what I learned when I show up is that the very corrupt, evil regime that's running Kyrgyzstan at the time was being encouraged by Russia to evict us. And honestly, there was an element of shaking us down for a lot more money, and they got a lot more money, but they still didn't promise that we could stay. And I had some crafty little ways of fixing that problem. But what I learned in those crisis days to keep the wing, which, the direction from President Obama right down through General Petraeus, General McChrystal, was very clear. Not only are you going to hold this ground, keep this base here, but you are getting a surge, and you're going to logistically do 98% of it. And at the same time, my very trusted advisor, and who I would make my Kyrgyz deputy commander, she's a Kyrgyz woman of 70 years age, and she just told me very bluntly and honestly to my face, the Kyrgyz people hate your guts. They hate all Americans. Didn't start that way in 9/11, but now we're here because all the money goes to the corrupt regime, not to us, and we're still the 187th poorest nation on the planet. And now I'm looking at an ugly American situation, and the table is set for what's going to be the greatest adventure of my life. And I've got to basically shift gears and go, okay, all you colonels who work for me, you're going to do the mission. I'll fly on Saturdays to take the edge off, and then I'm going to be out the gate with volunteers, building schools, establishing women's programs, getting entrepreneurship in women, getting to know the university students, getting into every walk of life and nook and cranny that I can, and trying to make a difference. To General Petraeus, my boss's credit, he absolutely gave me a blank check. He basically said, Blaine, all the Kyrgyz decisions are yours, and if you make the wrong ones, I'll just fire you. And I thought that was marvelous. But along that path, I learned Kyrgyz. I got to know these people. I did TV interviews live in their language, which was wonderful, being in my dress
Wow.
blues and being broadcast all the way into Moscow homes.
Wow.
But we changed the deal. We got our relationships right, and just in time, because that spring we had a violent revolution. 71 what I call children or young men and women lost their lives in a massacre in their downtown square, and now there's 2,000 that are wounded in the hospitals, and I've got 130s coming out of the Middle East with medical supplies, and I'm in the hospitals, and I'm helping this wonderful leader, Rosa Otunbayeva, who was an opposition leader, and we helped support her to become the interim leader there. And I put basically a foundation underneath her. And all of these stories have greater stories along with them, but I'm not gonna delve into that right now. But what I will say is, I walked away from the whole experience after we saved the life of the 14th Peace Corps volunteer as I'm walking out of the country. I will say that all of those experiences always had my mind and my head near America, near, wow, I know places in Appalachia that need this kind of aid. Wow, I know the school that I just broke the ribbon on would be so appreciated in parts of Arapahoe, Arizona. I know that the things that we're doing here seem to be important to us as a nation, but what my thoughts were never far from is, wow, we need to be doing things like this in our own country. And we need to be grateful for our own country because we have a framework and a constitution. And whether we believe it or not, and I think a lot of Americans are worried about this, I certainly am. Are we still self-governed? And if we are, then what are we doing for our own people here at home? And so my takeaway is, I loved my year there. I love the Kyrgyz people, and I'd go back in 5 seconds. But what I walked away from was, your own country needs help. Your own country needs this kind of attention, and your own country needs this kind of love. And that's my entire year there in an acorn. But that's how I can summarize it best for you.
Wow, it's a very compelling story, and it really, to me, really just brings in all the realness of what is going on in this world. It's easier for people in America to sit back here, and one reason why I really focus on the military is because I don't people really realize all that y'all have given up and sacrificed, and the jobs that you're doing, not only here in America, but what our soldiers do around the world in all these different countries, and the depths and the impact of those efforts are long lasting in a lifetime for some people. And we never hear about these stories. And of course, you gentlemen are so proud to, no different than anyone else. You don't really like the accolades, but I want to give them to you because, you and every veteran across this country are my heroes, and it's just instilled in me that way. And I think people hearing these stories really helps them. Listen, I was from the old school. I told everybody, and I think I told you, Colonel, this about our own dad. They never talked about any of their military experience. Never, ever, 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 ever. It's a sacred oath. It's nothing that's ever talked about. So we miss out on hearing a lot of these stories, and the fact that you're willing just to give us a glimpse inside of that footprint, I think is just very honorable, and I'm so grateful for you sharing that with us today. And like you said, you look around and you saw it's happening in my own country. This is happening in America. This is why we are all here today. We need leaders across this country to step up, to take this country back. And we're all 2+ years into this now, and I think that's been one of the biggest challenge, is recruiting leaders from across this country to actually step forward and get into this practical tactical bag that we're going to run down here real quick, Colonel, because I'm going to keep preaching this every day, all the time. This is what it's going to take. There's so many people that saying, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this. Nothing's ever going to change. It's crumbling before our eyes. We're losing it all. Get in the fight. Get in the fight, America. And this is the way to do that. So what I want to do is I want to get into the practical tactical so that the everyday person knows what they can do to take back and restore their own communities, because that's what we're in the process of. These communities are a mess all across this nation. And when I say a mess, we know what a mess is. Bad sheriffs. We've had at least 5 sheriffs in our state replaced in the last year and a half, okay, for one various reasons or another. Shameful, shameful, shameful. The judiciary in all of our townships are bought, sold, and paid for, okay, and so are the district attorneys and everyone else in authority that's supposed to be full of integrity and honor. And what are you left with? You're left with we the people, the everyday average American person who go into these occupations with integrity in their heart and in their soul, and they get in there once they got them in hook, line, and sinker to find out, no, we've got corrupt people at the top. The corruption is with the senior people. It's not with the people on the lower levels. This goes to the highest level of our government. And I've been speaking about it, these military generals, along with other retired military generals, I might add, about that is one of the biggest problems across this country. And that's part of the battle that's going on right now with what's going on in our financial industry and our
In the
banking
private
systems
sector,
here.
yeah.
That's right. And the reason why we need to focus in on this a lot, because we know that a lot is going on in the Pentagon. We all know about the military industrial complex. A lot of people serve these agencies. And I always say this with dignity and with integrity. They are not all bad. They are not all bad. What we need to do is we need to clean these places up. And yeah, that not only starts from the bottom up, but in this case, it needs to start from the top down. And I think that's what the public is seeing in the course of these last few years with these indictments, all this military movement and so forth. And I share this with you, gentlemen, before I give you the floor again, so that you, to kind of give you a glimpse into the mindset of us average people that are out here and what people are talking about and how we're viewing things. So from that standpoint, and where we are now, and we'll get to Ukraine and all those military updates in a minute, but right now we're talking about solving domestic issues right here and how the people get involved to do that. What can we do as Americans in this moment in time? A lot is to be said about the school boards and the county commissions and the local GOPs and those types of things, but what a lot of people are running into, there's pockets of success across the country. A lot of people are running into the same old corruption. So I think some are more advanced and are at the point where they're saying, okay, our state can't be saved. There's just too many corrupt people out there. Colonel, what could you offer us to do in these instances?
Well, there's a lot there to unpack, and I'll get started. And I can promise you, with a successful handoff to Blaine, the message will be the same. But I want to start with this idea that there's an average citizen in America. We would say that there is no such thing. There is a citizen of this country, and every one of them is blessed to live here, and every one of them has the opportunity to lean out and to engage in this fight for a nation's survival. The second thing is to flip the script on what we would normally picture as being top down, bottom up. To me, the top down starts with the individual, moves to the family, goes to the community, and then down to your counties and states. And the federal is the least important of all the above. It's supposed to be that way. We need to start thinking about that way, because if we're the masters of our future in this country, we need to act like it. The last thing, and I would get to this idea of hope. And I teach a lot of biblical apologetics, and I have for years, mostly on the science arena. I love astronomy and other science topics. Yeah, darkness is the natural state of everything. Light is a forced injection. And every single one of those pockets of success is light. It may be a dim light in the darkness, it may be a bright light in the darkness, but just like that choir sounds great together, you put all those lights together, you're seeing something different across this country. And what's unique with Restore Liberty, there's almost an international component to this now, where we talk to other Western democracies. You probably didn't know that right now that there's a protest going on in England against things like the Agenda 2030. Well, some of the people that are leading that, I talk to on a weekly basis.
Wow, cool.
Those points of light are out there all over the world. And I am excited to live through this time because it fits my personality as a fighter. It fits my personality as a joyful warrior and someone who's focused on hope. But I'm also a realist that there could be a lot of loss between here and victory. And we should never give up because of that.
Nope.
And at that point, I want to give it over to Blaine because I can guarantee you he's got some great words too.
So I love this question about what can Americans who are waking up and they're disturbed at they're watching their country slip away. What can they do? And it immediately it becomes so overwhelming when you think about all the layers and all the things that we see happening. So here's what got me. I saw the COVID thing come down the pipeline. And like Darin, it's called the curse of the strategist. You don't really see crises or events. What you see is puzzle pieces. And maybe there's a tinfoil hat element to that. I don't know. But what you'll see is when you get the COVID puzzle piece, and then you start to see some of the rhetoric and the policies that rolled out from that. Meaning, wait a minute, we've got a virus that 99.9% of the folks are going to be fine if they'll just get it. It's really the elderly that are most vulnerable. Okay, well, let's sideline them and let's carry on and we'll get through this. Instead, watching them destroy over 300,000 small businesses, watching them immediately tear up the Constitution and disregard civil liberties, watching them do all these things, started to make things click in my mind. And I remember, and this is my advice for all Americans, by the way, I remember my first step. My first step was I prayed on this. And my prayer was, Lord, I am going to admit right up front, I am a flawed man. I do not have all the answers. And I am struggling with pushing away things that I should push away all the time. But you have imbued me with certain gifts. And if you could see your way clear to use me in this coming fight, whatever it's going to be, no matter how dark that storm, if you'll just use me as a tool and leverage whatever I have that you gave me, I'll try to be worthy of that and I'll be up for it. Now, you better be careful what you ask for because you might get it. And in this case, I can easily tell you that the Lord went, really? Okay. Well, if you want to say you're up for this, okay, we'll put you in and see what you got. And it just got worse from there. You saw Antifa burning down cities, BLM, all the nonsense in the media about mostly peaceful. And then underneath the radar, this mail-in ballots thing starts to come up because COVID. And so you look at all that and you're like, that was the immediate moment I went, oh, they're going to steal the election. That's what this whole thing has been about. And so we got to that place, and then all these elements of theater with Jan 6 and all this other happy garbage. But the election came and went, and a dear friend from college introduced me to somebody she was inspired by and said, you guys need to meet each other. And I said, great, I'm up for it. And that was the day that on Zoom I met Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub. And we started talking about all of this stuff happening in our country. And it turns out Darin and I are probably, I don't know, 25,000 decimal places to the nth degree apart from each other. And so we
What do you mean? Can you define that? What do you mean by that?
Darin and I are very much aligned in our worldview, and from his experience in the Army,
that perfect clearance, right?
Yeah,
I'm
my
your head. I
experience
get it.
in the Air Force and his experience in the Army, we lined up, and so we saw trouble and we saw it coming fast. And so what we did was we said, hey, listen, let's get to a separate place far away from everybody. We'll buy up an Office Max of its butcher paper, as much as it's got. We'll get magic markers and maybe a little whiskey too, and some pizza. and we'll pile into an Airbnb.
Sounds like my kind of party.
Yeah, and we'll pile into an Airbnb in the Northwest, and we'll map out what we think we need to do. We did not fly there going, yeah, it's going to be Restore Liberty. We're going to fashion it off the Sons of Liberty. It's going to be amazing. We're going to inspire people left and right.
Right.
We showed up, and first we're meeting face to face for the first time, and then we started putting pen to paper, and it just started unfolding, and it goes right back to 1775 and the Sons of Liberty and Sam the Publican and the Gadsden flag and all of these milestones. But the difference is the Sons of Liberty were pursuing liberty. And what we believed was, no. This time and place, they gave us liberty. We need to restore liberty.
Exactly.
And so we built some pillars. We talked about some great ideas. We made phone calls with patriots of note all over the United States. And before you know it, on $50,000 donations and a dog named Rex, Darin, to his credit, built us up in well over 35 states. And here's, even when I think I'm going to have a bad day, which I never really do, all I got to do is pop into our little state directors chat room, and I'm immediately refilled, because you've got all these folks that are doing stuff at the grassroots level in their areas. And then we've connected to all these different types of groups across the nation, and we can get a good picture. Amen. That's why I think Darin opened the conversation with, listen, we're looking out across the country, and we can tell you that people are waking up left and right, and they're buzzed, and they're ready, and they're excited. What's really cool is nobody here is talking about weird stuff about, hey, let's build a militia. Hey, let's build this. No. This is all about, we understand the law. We understand the Constitution. We understand when it's being violated, and we understand the levers of power right on down to the sheriff level. And so then we sit back and we go, okay, great, awesome. What can we do about it? And we have, Darin and I, we're a couple of aviators who like to aviate, but what we've got now in terms of a group, well, that's the real formidable part of Restore Liberty, because these are folks, men, women, all walks of life, vet, non-vet, it doesn't matter. They just will inspire you every day. And if you need something to happen, they're going to get it done.
Absolutely. One of the first things I heard when you both started to talk is that, when we're pondering the question of what someone can do who, wants to get involved in whatever way, I heard you say with step one, when I, with my best friend, traversed the Lost Coast Trail here in Northern California, I thought it was just going to be a leisurely walk along the beach. And, I got through that harrowing experience one step at a time. And it's so powerful when you get the right people in the room, and everybody has the right amount of energy, the right kind of energy, and everybody's just, gung-ho to get, to save this country is really what we're trying to do. Like you said, you don't know where you're going to start. You don't know where you're going to end up. You just put one foot in front of the other, and before you know it, you're restoring liberty, right? I mean, isn't that how we do it?
What's been done to us has been done to us for decades, and we can't expect to unwind it in days.
Exactly. Great.
So point. We have to be careful about expectations with people too, and understand that despite how much we feel overwhelmed and how much we may think that all of this is just piling upon us and how bad it may be, and it might be, who knows? Our only duty is to keep walking forward.
Yes.
Because the only way we truly lose is to quit.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important.
Not
and
happy.
I think
right.
Not happy. Right.
Not in my buildup, that's for sure.
I think what's also important too is what you're doing with media right now is a perfect example of really part of our construction within Restore Liberty is independent-minded people are kind of like herding cats, and they're all going different directions in the field, right? So our picture is, well, you're not going to get them underneath one umbrella, really, like a single quote command or whatever you want to call it. Let's try to at least run towards one fence line. So team of teams approach is one way to put it. I like to call it a coalition of the willing. It's all the same in the end. I don't want to be the Association of Mature American Citizens. I don't want to be Take Action USA or any of these other organizations. We want to work with their leadership to spread the word our way. We'll spread their word our way as well. And we can all come together. Now, we don't need to be a massive tea party.
Right.
Blaine said it. Millions of people across the country, multiple organizations. And if we all work together, we'll be successful. Let's just keep running towards the fence line and stop going all over the place. That's become important. It can be difficult, but it needs to be done.
So what do you imagine the fence line being? How can you define that a little bit? What do you see it being? What would an average person that doesn't have a military mind and a strategy mind, what does that look like, running to the fences?
Well, I'll put it out there real quick and then hand it off to Blaine. But there's this term in the military called the end state. It's kind of like, what do you want it to look like when the smoke clears and you win?
There you go.
When the smoke clears and we win, we envision the government that governs best governs closest to the people, to borrow Reagan, that it is the least intrusive and the smallest amount that it can be necessary to maintain its duties in accordance with the Constitution, the contract that we, the people, signed with the government. That's what we see without going into all the details. And over to Blaine.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's actually just absolute wisdom. The way that I see the end state is kind of like treating a patient in the field that's been fallen on the battlefield. You first treat for shock. you then put a tourniquet on it if that's what it needs, and you start to put back quality of life thereon. This is where our nation is. We're in trouble. We're in trouble. We have folks that have hijacked the government. We have a government that is so big, so monolithic. We have this cute thing called a Congress, but it's been so eclipsed by all these agencies that wield power that you can't even imagine how big that power is. And I think that it's been, in many ways, a lot of bad actors who get nothing but more budget dollars shoved up their nose. This is our actual money that they get to attack us. And whether it's 87,000 IRS agents, could be a perverted use of the Patriot Act to spy on American citizens. It could be any of those things. But what this is indicative of is a government that has well gone beyond its skis and its scope and its power. And it means that currently, and this is my own opinion, at this time, we are certainly not self-governed. And we live in fear of our government. And that's not the way it's supposed to be the other way around. It's supposed to be they live in fear of the ballot box. And we don't even believe that the ballot box is secure. So this is an interesting time. It's an exciting time because we're looking at an issue now that we have had to deal with for the last 40, 50 years. It's just never been front and center, and it's never impacted Americans the way that it does now. So treat for shock. Let's go recognize there's a problem. Let's put a tourniquet on it. That means self-governance has to come back our way, meaning you professional politicians, we have a problem with that. You're not serving us. There really isn't two political parties as the media would have you know. There's basically a uniparty and a bunch of folks who want liberty back. And so I was stunned this morning when I saw from the Munich Security Conference, Senator McConnell, who I've met a couple of times. He said the number one priority in the United States right now is to support Ukraine. And this is absolutely emblematic of what I'm talking about, which is the American people seem to be left out of the mix here because I think most Americans right now, in terms of rank ordering their security problems, would look at that southern border and all the fentanyl traveling into it, and the human trafficking, and the unchecked, unknown illegals that are just coming across. And I will call them illegals, and I will always call them illegals. That's not the number one problem, really. We're and are we giving? I mean, I don't think anybody would argue that Ukraine needs some help because of a belligerent taking over their country or invading their country. But I would say we certainly can't give so much that it hurts our own readiness to deal with the real thugs in this world. And so I see this end state as restoring our self-governance, as eliminating the concept of the professional politician, term limits, as coming back to enshrining and respecting and stewarding the American taxpayer dollars, meaning our wealth is our own. And we're going to insist that you are not in a position to tax us into oblivion and then sneer at us when you want even more. I'm all for repealing the 16th Amendment. Is that something that could be done? Yeah, I mean, everybody in the world will tell you, no, it can't be done. I believe it can be done. I think Americans are getting to this magical place where we're actually going to hit the pause button and go, we're on to you. And you've worked very hard to co-opt us, but we're going to insist that we not only take our country back, but we take our government back. And it probably means that we need 60 to 70% less of you drawing a government paycheck.
Yeah, and I will add on to the end of that real quick too. We kind of picture this like neighbors in a community next to each other, and one neighbor is pointing his finger at his neighbor's yard that's just full of trash and leaves and hasn't been maintained, and he turns around and looks and realizes that his house and his yard are worse. Maybe we need to take care of our own yard first.
I agree.
Well, I think all of America could agree with that, Colonel. Take care of our own country first, and that's why. So, I have to touch on two things the general said. That's why a lot of people are very disturbed about additional monies going to Ukraine. And, I think we did a few shows back on all of the money. And, according to some military analysts out there that are trying to track these dollars, they don't even know where all the money is right now. They can't even come up with a full accounting of what's already been sent. In addition to that, the inventory of the military equipment that has been sent over there cannot even all be accounted for. And in some cases, again, I want to say allegedly, there are unconfirmed reports that some of this stuff is out on the black markets already. So you have Americans sitting here over in our country saying they're sending, these dollars are just figures we as a normal people can't even comprehend. Trillions and trillions of dollars. Well, we're all trotting off to our voting booths, and we have to vote on a ballot whether we want the children of America to get free lunch in school. None of it makes sense, and I think people are very much awake at this point. I think people are more educated at this juncture 2 years down the road. And I think people are looking for action. That's what we're not seeing. And what we are hearing, though, and what a lot of us have been hearing since day one, is that this is going to have to be taken back by the people. But so many were taken in by the misinformation and disinformation media campaign that's out there that says somebody's going to come and save us. The military's coming to get us, people. They're going to help solve all these problems, and nobody has to do anything. We'll let you all know when it's over. That's not reality. And that's, people have got to snap themselves out of that. And again, it's this paid opposition, this propaganda campaign that has worked so successfully. We're fighting it as a battle ourselves on the daily with trying to get accurate information out to the people on not only what is going on in this country, but what we as individuals can do to help take it back. And then it's also opening eyes up to many who are already down that road over a year and a half ago, where, hey, our whole town is corrupt. I give up. Nothing can be done here unless they come over. The military comes in here in a COG situation and takes our town over. It's just done. I'm going to have to move somewhere else if I don't like it, or I got to just live in it. So, this is coming from all across America. And I know, living in a blue state, I'm surrounded by it. And it doesn't matter how much military you have in your state, because we all know we have a ton of military in my state, yet we're still a captured operation. So, I think a lot of people are at their wits' end. I think we need to start pushing these local programs that have been being pushed for the last year and a half. But I also think that it's time that things come full circle in this country to some type of action that the American people can see on the higher levels, to take out some of these so-called senior representatives of this nation that are just a disgusting shame to us on the daily, and we all know who they are. I don't need to start rattling off names. They're in charge of our country right now, and it's not good, and the American people are not seeing any resolve. So I want to keep encouraging people to go to restore-liberty.org to see how they can get involved in the local level, on the state level, and then on the national level. It's important. We all have to be part of something that takes action in all three of those areas, and that's what we're trying to do as podcasters, is trying to make sense out of all of this for the American people. And you gentlemen in this organization, you bring a lot to the table in helping people to start to unravel what's been going on, because let's face it, I want to segue into the next topic on this. And Colonel, you just did an article on this, and Power Girl, you just did a show on this. And that is the sickness that we have from everybody being so confused with all this information about what's going on. I mean, Power Girl, chime in at any time. What are you calling it?
Stockholm syndrome.
Colonel, yeah, Stockholm syndrome.
That's what it
we
is.
need to talk about that, because that's a real deal. That's a real thing.
Well, the thing I know about Stockholm syndrome from my personal experience of it is it's very strong, and it will make you do things that you would normally not do. So I believe that, again, I'm not a professional. I'm only going by my personal experience. But from my personal experience, I believe it's a defense mechanism to trauma. And what's happened to this country is definitely trauma. And, when you experience a trauma split where, you've opened up now to this trauma because it's too much pressure for you to handle, the first thing you're going to do is go into the defense mode of denial. And so it takes a very strong person to break through that denial. So the number one thing I would say about what we're experiencing with the American populace right now in regards to Stockholm syndrome is we, number one, need to have grace for each other. And again, I heard you say it, Colonel, keep our own street clean. I'm a big fan of JBP, Jordan B. Peterson, who's a big freedom fighter in this regard. And, he says, make your own bed. If you just start with making your own bed, keeping your own house in order, my experience is that keeps me busy enough. And when you have a strong foundation, and that's what happens when you focus on yourself and your own inner battle, that is a very powerful place. And but coming from Stockholm syndrome, I'm telling you, that is a cavern from where, when I experienced Stockholm syndrome to where I am now. And I think you mentioned this too, Colonel, is that only the grace of God can get me there. That I could not myself get myself there. So this is why, number one, when we're dealing with someone that's dealing with in this context, the American populace, we need to have grace with each other, and that's why the infighting for me is so painful, because it's not just ripping my psyche apart, it's not just ripping my heart apart, it's ripping the heart of this nation apart. And to me, it's the most detrimental thing we can do is turn our turrets inward. I mean, you guys are both, military men. Does that make any sense in a war plan that you would turn your guns inward? Just right? It doesn't make any sense. So to me, if we could just get that under control and just be graceful for each other and love each other through this Stockholm syndrome, because everybody's going through it, in one way or another, that's huge, and it starts one step at a time. Make up your bed, make your bed every day. We don't have the answers. I remind people all the time, this is God's war. It's been fought for millennia, and we're just spectators. So really the best thing we can do is trust God, make our bed, keep our own house clean, and do whatever little thing. And I always say that the Peace and Unity live chat audience is the most important people in the room, because they're the ones that can get this word out. They can share, they can like, they can subscribe, they can get invested in the conversation, they can get invested in these patriots that are putting everything on the line, to fight this fight, to get the news out. And that, to me, that's how we fight the Stockholm syndrome. It happens, like you said, it's not going to we might not look. What is that old proverb that says the man who plants the tree and knows he's never going to enjoy that shade, that's the greatest sacrifice? That's where we're at. I mean, we may not enjoy the freedom that we're fighting for, but that doesn't mean we can stop fighting. We have to, it's a lifestyle. It just becomes a lifestyle, and we have to never give up, and we have to do whatever we can, because I'm going to tell you, the number one thing to remember about Stockholm syndrome is it's heavy and it's deep, and some people never come out of it.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that, like you said, grace. We have to give grace to people, because, like Blaine already mentioned once, that there's a lot of people who said, I didn't sign up for this, whether it be they Democrat, GOP, Libertarian, it doesn't really matter. In that Stockholm Syndrome piece, that my point with writing that article is the fact that, yes, we as a society, we really are in some ways trying to latch on to our captor. And you can describe that captor as either the federal government, a state government. You could call it an international globalist organization that people are leaning on. And
it could just be the idea of what we thought America was.
Right. And that's why we talk about restoring liberty, because obviously there's an implication there that something's been lost.
Right.
And I think it's really, really important that we go back to this idea of local community-based work, mostly. Mm-hmm. In fact, part of what I teach going across the country, if the people that are inviting me want to hear it, is how to use a simple structure to rebuild a small community. And that goes back to the survival training and thing that I've been a part of and been a trainer over the years, just how to, in some ways, disconnect, not from people, but from those entities, people, and means by which you can be controlled. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how when people hear something that we might consider to be extremely simple is actually phenomenally liberating. Mm-hmm. And there's no greater reward in that. And I think we need to keep remembering that for sure.
I think that's a really good point that you made there. I think, and it's probably going to be a little controversial with your audience, because I know, there's a lot of folks who turn to what I would say well-intended, well-meaning patriots who their message may not be quite accurate for the times we face today. And what I would say by that is, anytime you see in any of these outlets words like trust the plan, or watch the movie or enjoy the movie or stuff like that, I almost feel like it's a message that's been propagated by the forces that we seek to push back on. And the reason that I say that is because no, the plan is us.
Yes.
The plan is we the people.
You. Yes.
And the plan, sure. and enjoy the movie. Well, we're the actors in the movie.
Yep.
And we're the ones that are the good guys, and we've got to go ahead and save the day at the end of the movie. So that's as light a touch as I can put on it. The heaviest touch I would put on it is, please be careful whether, and decide whether you're purchasing on some of these outlets hopium, which is what I call it. Are you buying into hopium, or are you going to say, well, that's a nice thing and that's a pretty story and trust the plan is awesome? Or is it, hey, let me, and this is where I started when, from your last question about where do you begin? I turned to prayer to say, look, I need guidance. And when you get your guidance, turn inside and say, what was I just told? pray on it, meditate on it, do whatever you need to do to find out what you're called to do. And it could be something as little as, taking a daily run at your congressman on their website and saying, hey, I want answers to this, or I'm going to be on your Facebook for a while, so don't mind me. Could be that. You might be a social media warrior, and that you're led inside internally going, you know what? I got to get the kids to soccer. I got to make these lunches. I got to go to school board. I got to go to church. But this is where I can probably do something. That's how you get into this movie.
Yep.
and that's how you become part of the plan.
Yep.
But be careful when somebody says, hey, why don't you pay $75 and come sit down in a seat and I'll tell you all about trust the plan. And in my world, and the world that I come from, I always get very nervous when somebody says, oh, there's no pain to you. All you got to do is sit back.
Right.
It's almost like the other team is saying, hey, look, I just took down a whole pile of their army because I told them to trust the plan. and when you go back to 9/11, I think one of the most discouraging, disenfranchising, demotivating things I heard our president at the time say was, go shopping. And as a young major about to go into this war, I'm saying, really? We told America to go shopping? Because I seem to remember World War II when we said,
ration,
grow a victory garden,
right.
Learn how to weld, get
Right.
to your nearest factory, because we got to pull together as a nation.
Yep.
And I think this path that I'm kind of very carefully navigating in this response is actually the path that takes us to first principles, which gets you to the deck of a British ship that's got a bunch of tea that needs to go overboard and a bunch of hooligans from the Sons of Liberty who said, this has to happen. We got to send a message. And that's where we're at now. So I'm not espousing that anybody gets out there and goes and finds a container ship and launches some Chinese containers off of it. Although as much fun as that sounds, that may sound fun. But what I would say is you really need to kind of scope out where your family, your community, you're at. Are you in good shape? Are you resilient? Do you understand that it's probably going to get a little bit worse, maybe a lot worse before it gets better? And but you're in for it, that you're all in on this, that you're like, hey, look, I'm in on it. Lord, pick me, let me go. Whatever you've got in store for me, let me be at my best to do it. Despite all of my transgressions and failings, get the best of me out there and let me get at this. But I'm not going to trust anybody's mythological plan, and I'm not going to say enjoy the movie. If I want to enjoy a movie, I'll go watch one. And unfortunately, there's very few you can watch.
There's very few good movies these days. Yeah.
so that's my adjoinder to that.
Well, I agree with you, General, about this watch the movie stuff. I was done with the popcorn about 2 months after they said eat the popcorn. And that was almost 2 years ago. So that don't work. I don't like popcorn. But this is part of the problem that's leading to these issues in the general public, this very effective disinformation, misinformation campaign. Okay.
The fog of war, I call it.
People aren't programmed, especially older people, to say, hey, I have to now start wondering whether what I'm hearing coming off of the television into my living room is accurate or enough. No, because we grew up in a time and an era where that whatever comes across that's what it is. That's what it is. Or whatever your mother and father told you. I wasn't allowed to watch too much TV when I was younger, so it's not a problem for me. But we see the trash that they have on there now. We see the trash that Holly weirdos are putting out now.
Wow.
You know what?
Scary.
Really crack. Yeah, it's awful. You can't even watch. Look, You can't even watch the TV anymore just for the commercials because they're so disgusting. So, there's a big problem in this country. And I think it's because of those images and those graphics that are coming not only across the mainstream television, but across social media is what's waking people up to what is going on in this country. Has everybody lost their mind? Because, one thing I don't think that the bad side, let's call it, for lack of a better phrase, because we know there's a lot of operators on that side with different names. But for argument's sake, we'll just say the bad side. They count on this stuff. They put all this stuff in place. It's been in place for years. They put all this pre-programming in place, and it's affected a lot of people's psyche. So, this psychosis that's going on in this country with this disinformation campaign has got to start to be unwound. And all of that starts with the Hollywood component. Okay. And I think what a lot of Americans are waiting for is, I don't think people would be sad if those people disappeared like tomorrow, but we have a judicial system that won't allow these indictments to be unsealed to start charging some of these people, because America's very intelligent at this point. They're not only finding solutions on how do we make it better, and they're actually doing that, but they're running into brick walls because in some places it just can't be done because of all of this other stuff that existed before they even started, and that's controlling, the bigger picture, let's call it, for lack of a better phrase. So we've got to start taking these things segment by segment for segment, and really re-educating people. That's our whole goal. What's LW's motto? Educate, motivate, and unify. There's a lot of education that needs to be done. And I'm not talking education about what's creepy in this world. I think we all know what's creepy and bad.
Well, that's what we're doing. I
thing.
mean, Liberty, that's what we're doing on Freedom Friday with the, as we actually we started calling it, the first episode we talked about eating the elephant. It really is eating the elephant one bite at a time. And we're learning critical thinking skills. We're talking about the lost tools of learning, because, that's our part. Everybody has a different part and everybody has a different role. That's our part. We're bringing this great content that Jake Jackson has created that is really goes deep into the philosophers, that he's such an incredible mind. And, and it is working. We're trying to create this weekly phenomenon, and people are starting to really catch on. And I would just say that, you're talking to somebody who has been shut down on all fronts. PG&E saw me as such a threat that they completely shut me down. And, if I feel like what's driven me forward, besides the Holy Spirit, obviously, and my faith in Jesus Christ and my relationship with him, but it's really the American spirit that was born in me. And, and I see, and that's what attracts me to Brock Maddox. That's what attracts me to Jake Jackson. That's what attracts me to Liberty Warrior. And, to the gentleman here on the panel, because that American spirit, I'm telling you, I don't have to tell anybody here on the panel. We are the beacon on the hill. The world is watching us and waiting for us to do what we are famous for doing. And we're doing it. The problem is we're not getting any press. But I'm telling you, we are doing it, and it doesn't take much, to see. You just have to scratch the surface a little bit and get beyond that. But it's happening, and it really, I tell people all the time, your sheriffs, your local governance, even your military men are only as powerful as you are, because this is supposed to be a government of we the people. And this is I couldn't be more aligned with you on this one, Colonel. We are all about we the people on Freedom Friday. My biggest attraction to Brock Maddox, you got to meet the other day, is that he is the we the people guy. I mean, this guy's out there in Wisconsin, just a guy that came off of his couch a couple of years ago, and he's got thousands of followers that love his energy, and what they see in him is the American spirit that we are so famous for. But it has been kind of put under this wet blanket of, it came into our living room so nice and easy, the Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best. And now look where we're at with Cardi B and Lady Gaga. I mean, it's what a progression. So, this frog has been done boiled. So it's going to take, like you said, it's going to take a while. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I think a lot more is happening than we get to see because of the media blackout. And that's why I set forward, when all this happened to me, to go in the family business and, get behind a microphone, even though my knees shook for a good, at least 6 months before I really, started to feel normal. Or, and I used to do this for a living, guys. I mean, I used to do, public speaking for a living. So this is nerve-wracking stuff. We're not expecting everybody to do that, but everybody can do something. Everybody needs to do something. And I really love that you're saying, go inward and pray, because your Father knows exactly what he made you to do. If you want to know what you were put on this earth to do, he will tell you. Just ask him. And like the general said, I would add, what you said about, ask if you're a willing heart, open yourself up. What do you want from me? Just make sure you buckle up after you say that prayer, right, General?
True.
Would you agree?
Very true.
Yes, and just a small
He will do
example
it.
of just a small example of that. I just want to point out, Miss Shimko, thank you. She is on the front lines as a prayer warrior and worshiping one of our viewers right now, sending us that message. That's a job. We all need that. And if it weren't for your prayers every day, Mr. Shimko, I don't know what I personally would do. But thank you for that, madam, because we know that those prayer warriors are one of the most in people, because it's our Lord who's going to help us further get down this path that we need to reclaim the republic of this great nation. And, it's hard for people as we're fighting our local area. And again, that's where it all starts, everyone. Restore-liberty.org. Everybody needs to get over there. It starts there, and we're going to keep pushing that. But we also have going on, and I want to segue into our next segment with this, Colonel and the General. People are also watching what's going on worldwide. I don't think that we've ever lived in a time where there was so much interest in world events and what's going on militarily around the world. And before we even start this segment, I want to let everybody know, we have military people on here to speak about this for a reason, because I'm one of the people, General, who is sick and tired of all of that misinformation going around the internet from people just picking it up from places. I like to go straight to the source. So I'd like to go to intelligent people who are actually in a position to be able to give and critique and give analysis to us that we can actually trust in. So having that been said, I want to let everybody know you guys have been in the military. You're military strategist, and this isn't what's happening in the world is not anything new to you. What's different is the scenario that it's happening in. So can you gentlemen, however way you want to tag team this, really just lay out to people, okay? Let's start with just Ukraine. Everybody is so confused about Ukraine because we have the mainstream media trying to brainwash the American public with the fact and the narrative that everybody's against Ukraine and Ukraine is the victim here, when in reality we have 90% of America on alternative media, and they know differently, and this is creating a big challenge. So how would you gentlemen addressing the understanding of what's going on in Ukraine, and who in fact is the good guy or the bad guy over there? B, why is it, do you think that it's taking so many American dollars if it's not for money laundering purposes and bad deals from senior officials up on the top? And C, do you see an end to this? How do you see it all wrapping up? So
Darin,
do
you
we
jumping
want to
in the
start
hole
with?
first? You want me to?
That's a lot. I put it out there so
Well,
I can be
Darren's
quiet.
muted.
You guys
All
can
right,
be
I
stressed.
will pop in. So here's the problem with the traditional mainstream media. Let's make it as simple as possible narrative to all warfare. So what everything is presented to the American people through the media lens is you have a good guy and you have a bad guy, and they're going to go to war. and we've told you who the good guy is, so we're all going to now pull for the good guy. And in this particular part of what I would call World War III, because honestly, we may already be in World War III and we just haven't realized it yet. We don't know when the history books in the future will demarcate the start of that dreadful war, if it is to happen. But it could be already underway. You might actually have a situation where you have a bad guy versus a bad guy, and the only good guys are the actual citizens on the ground being raped, killed, and abducted every single day, and the valiant military forces in the Ukraine who are absolutely fighting for every square inch of what they believe to be their sovereign territory. And so for them, my heart goes out. Now, I didn't just throw President Zelensky under the bus, but I did, like we should do all leaders, hold him up to scrutiny, skepticism, account, find out where he's coming from. I, full disclosure, have conversations with several ministers around him, and I advise them on the best, possible strategies that they can employ with the resources that they have. But if you back it up before that point, I think the key word in this conversation about world affairs and what's got everybody standing up on edge is weakness. It's instinctual to Americans. We know full well that if we exhibit weakness in the United States, that our world, our security back home gets much more dangerous. And in the past 2 years, we've exhibited nothing but weakness. And so it starts with this administration, whether you want to call them legitimate or illegitimate, that's up for debate, but doesn't really matter. They're the ones holding power, and they take their seats and they start out a diplomatic conference with China that they want to be very public because they want to land their public blows on China's human rights record, of which they're not really going to take the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party, to the depths of what their darkness in human rights really is. Nobody said, I see you've got prisoners and you're harvesting their organs and sharing them amongst party members, although we should have done that. Instead, what we got to see is a public display of the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who actually got into a nice fight with Secretary Blinken today at the Munich Security Conference, basically hand it to us. And that was the first step in a cascading series of this national security team's weakness. And so where does it go next? Well, it goes to Putin saying there's some interesting things going on with this new president and his administration. We're going to start putting troops on the Ukrainian border. Nobody checks him on that. Nobody says a thing about it. You couldn't find anything in even The Economist on that. And then we get to that fateful day, which caused me to reverse my quiet general in retirement policy, which I had adopted 7 years ago when I retired. Kabul fell, and it was my squadron, my C-17 squadron that I used to command 15 years ago, that had those bodies falling off that airplane, and watching 20 years of your service go up in flames, watching the times when you were a commander and sending coffins home under flags, and the horrors that came with that. I can't tell you how much grief counseling I did for people on active duty who were actually flying those jets. I mean, I had 2-star generals asking me for assistance in just talking through these things because we couldn't believe what we saw unfolding. But what we saw unfolding strategically was massive, massive weakness. And I believe that in Kabul is where Vladimir Putin made his final decision that, yes, we are going to go in on Ukraine now and finish what we started in Crimea. And so it goes unchecked. We had a deterrable war for Ukraine. We could have deterred that war. We chose not to. And so now here we are in this very dangerous place with the Chinese probing and testing us, North Korea, Iran, Russia, all probing and testing us around the world. We see, the Iranians or the Russians and the Chinese committing to naval exercises with the South Africans. We see 2 cruisers from the Iranian Navy steaming towards Brazil. We see a world that's much more dangerous, and it all gets to projecting American weakness. That for the thugs of the world, and honestly, they are thugs. Our weakness is what puts us in these vulnerable situations. I'm not a neocon. I'm not a neolib. I certainly have, from my time in Mogadishu to today, I've got my belly full of adventure and warfare. But I can tell you that if you don't want war, then you better prepare for it. And if you want peace, you better be strong and ready. And what the world sees right now is American society in decay. Our military more worried about their use of pronouns than they are their mission sets. Vax policies that have deleterious results, that we're not even willing to be honest with ourselves as a country about the mistakes we made with the vax program and how many people are getting hurt afterwards. We're not willing to own up to the fact that we've had all these foreign policy failures, and yet not one member of the national security team has been held accountable yet. And the only person from Afghanistan that's been fired so far is a brilliant, brave whistleblower who chose to go public with his discord or his dissent, named Lieutenant Colonel Stu Schellenberger, U.S. Marine Corps. And so when we want to get to just isolating this war in Ukraine, everything I just said, you're going to have to widen out your aperture to the entire thing, I'm afraid. And then when we start looking at how, if we're going to support Ukraine, fine. But then how have we supported them? You've got logistics messes of fits and starts, the schizophrenia between we don't want to escalate and tick off a nuclear power, and at the same time, we'll do whatever it takes. and honestly, does that? So now you can get to a guy named Zelensky and you can go, well, maybe you're not a bad guy. Maybe you're just doing what we would expect, which is you're standing up and advocating for your country, no matter what your background is and no matter what has transpired in the past. But
can I just pause you for a moment, General?
Yeah, sure.
Can I just pause you for a moment to hit on that point? Because there's a lot of information about there right now while you're talking about this Ukraine, and you just said the word nuclear, and some would say, and I have to tend to agree that that's been the whole problem all along of why there hasn't been any open military action, so to speak, because of the threats that are not only in Ukraine, but might even be here, even domestically, in the regard of nuclear weapons. What say you about that?
Well, on the nuke side, we are sitting at a time in our history when the word nuclear and nuclear war and nuclear attack and World War III, those terms have never been more bantered about by the mainstream media, by governments, than they have been right now. That alone ought to give people pause. What I see, to finish off my point, and apologies because it's been belabored, is we see a dearth of diplomacy. I see a lot of let's get them howitzers and HIMARS and let's get jets and tanks. What I don't see is a State Department earning its pay and looking for off-ramps and looking for ways to conclude the conflict. They certainly didn't work to deter it. And so now here we have a World War I style attrition warfare that, without decisive air power, is never going to lead to anything more than dead bodies and a country that's getting mulched up, and potentially some wider conflict that we would call World War III. And so Darin may have a different spin on it, and that's entirely great. But in all of the work that I've done on all sides, Russia, Ukraine, United States, this is the place that I get to. And we would do well at this point to try to find a way to wind this up and take a few steps back, because it can get far worse than where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think the beauty about when Blaine said that we're that 0.000023 or whatever, apart from each other. This is a perfect example of that, because it's basically word for word what I would say and agree to anyways. And I think that helps organizationally. It certainly helps us because we understand that bigger picture more so than most, probably less so than others. And that's okay. As soon as you stop learning, then you stop living. But what's an interesting experience between the two of us is that Afghanistan thing. We were talking about the day after that happened, just to put it in a small period of time rather than what it was, that Ukraine was next. We knew that. And that's one of the things we talk about as an organization. Is one of the things that we like to bring people into Restore Liberty with is, do you want to be part of an organization that can fairly accurately tell you what will happen, or the ones that will tell you what already did? And either way, you're going to be on both sides of that equation at some point, regardless. But where he's talking to his wing people over in Kabul as they're getting ready to pull people out of that airport, and everything that we saw on the TV, I was getting interviewed because I was the one who wrote the non-combatant evacuation operation plan for how to get out of Afghanistan under duress as rapidly as possible. And that's one example where we showed weakness again, because basically they took the entire plan and flipped it and did everything the opposite of what was in it. And that crushed a lot of people too. We were both talking to a lot of different veterans and having to deal with that in a variety of different ways. So when we told people that Ukraine was next, and then we were going to be looking very closely at what China did with regards to Taiwan and all the countries that he already mentioned, people were fairly shocked and thought that we were maybe not exactly sane at that time. To the point where some of the things that we figured out that we both worked on years and years and years ago, people back then would have truly thought us insane. 20 years ago, I was telling senior leaders that I thought the Russian army was not very good. And here we are. 15 years ago, I wrote a thing called the GALT strategy, which was based on the idea that we needed to build something that was more of a breakaway or local parallel economy work. That was also considered crazy. So got a lot of things on the shelf that sometimes get pulled off the shelf and get used. And specifically, though, to Ukraine and the word allegedly when it comes to the black market, I can promise you that you won't need to be using that very long. That it's out there. It's inevitable with as much stuff as we're putting there. But a lot of the countries around the world want to look like they're doing something. And sometimes what they're doing is exactly the opposite of what they should be doing. Imagine if you were the country of Ukraine, and you wanted to get a whole bunch of new cars into the country, and someone just went over to a giant used car parking lot and threw every make and model and maintenance status of whatever they have in their back lot at you and said, "Here you go, enjoy." That's what we're doing by giving them Leopards and Abrams and Centurions and Chieftains and F-16s and Tornadoes. And you can run the gamut of all the different kind of equipment that we're throwing at Ukraine, saying, "Look, I did something." And I can promise you, having worked with Ukrainians before, they'll use it, and they're going to use it effectively as much as they possibly can. But we shouldn't expect them to be able to use those things very long when we haven't come with the parts, the materials, the maintenance, the expertise, the training that we as an American military have been able to develop. For example, the Germans, for example, the British, the same thing. We're just kind of throwing all kinds of random things at Ukraine and make the best of it. And sometimes we're actually giving them some of our most premier defense systems. And if you think those are not going to be captured somewhere on a battlefield at some point or destroyed and moved into countries that are not working in our best favor, I would dare say that they need to rethink that, and it will end up there. Why can we say that for sure? Well, because we do it with their equipment. So we should be thinking that's going to happen again.
Well, I think you're right on point with that, Colonel. And, look, there's been a lot of generals to come out talking about these issues and, tying them back. And, the American people, when we put this all together, it's the same corrupt money laundering system that has been in place is still being allowed to operate. Now, of course, something this massive, it can't be done overnight. So we see that the Russians are making progress in that respect. But, I think all of America is aware right now of the components of what was in Ukraine. There's many variables there, from the Khazarian stronghold that's been in the area. Uh, we all know that there's proof out there now about these business associations between and I don't want to say the name, I'll call him Obama because, two guys are running things right now. So we call him Obama, son. And, all these corporate ties are coming out. We know we had 4 politicians and 4 sons that were involved with the double CP and, things, contracts and companies and, Burisma and the whole bit. All of America's very well, excuse me, educated at this point in time. And people aren't seeing anything and they're not addressing these things in the mainstream media. So those things are what lend to people not doing anything, in my opinion, because they see, well, if they're not doing anything about these much larger scale things, and this corrupt system is being allowed to continue, and nobody's been arrested yet, well, that we know of in the public eye. And let's not even go down that rabbit hole about who's wearing a mask, who's an actor, who's not real. I can't even go there. That doesn't even matter anymore. These things are happening. And we see this happening to our country on a daily basis. So when it comes to Ukraine, I think the problem is the mainstream media, or even military people. I'll put this on Austin and Million. Nobody's come to expect too much, with all due respect to the military. Nobody respects these gentlemen anymore. That's part of the problem, the leadership at the very top. Nobody respects those people. Everybody's well in tune to what those two are up to and their team and all their people and what's been going on. It's out in the open forum right now. It's been out there for quite some time. So I think that keeps a lot of people, I hate to say it, but these worldwide events is what keeps a lot of people from not taking action here locally, because they're not seeing anything happen on the big front right there. And, we've got these pipeline issues. We've got these, and let's get into domestic issues over here. Let's get out of Ukraine for a minute. We'll pass over Taiwan because we all know that, things are being positioned around over there for a reason. And then, of course, Israel is last. So all of those operations are ongoing. We see that playing out. So what they do to distract us from let's get back into America right now and into domestic, the financial collapse of our financial system that most will say is totally fake at this point. The dollar being worthless, but everybody's out there still spending and they're still printing and nothing has been done. The CBDC is about to launch their digital currency. We all know it's worthless. We can go on and on and on. This is why people are not getting involved to take action, in my humble opinion. What say you, Colonel?
Well, yeah, this is the reason why we wrote the Practical Tacticals, was because sometimes all you can do is one thing.
Right.
So pick your one thing and get passionate about it.
There it is.
And then find your team and build your team around that passion and keep moving. You can't solve everything that's being forced upon you. Apparently, there was just recently another train derailment in Oregon with some nasty chemicals on it too that we've got to take a look at. And is this stuff significant because it's forced in front of us by the media and made significant, or is this more sort of normal, but we don't usually hear about it? That's the kind of the question I would like to have asked and answered. But again, it just comes back to the fact that we can't be distracted by all that noise. My personality, the way I operate, part of me just wants to get to whatever they're doing faster, because then I can deal with it. Because you can see it coming from a mile away if you've got the mind to see it coming. And I think we all do here, and many, many of people around the country do as well. And if you can see it coming, you're just like, you know what? I just want to deal with it, whatever that is. None of us, of course, would wish a financial collapse. None of us would wish on environmental or ecological disasters, that maybe the federal government going bankrupt, and all the different kinds of ways that can make this country go into a point where the people here are actually suffering in a way that we haven't suffered really since the 1929 stock market crash or worse. But I know it sounds weird, but to me this is kind of like running to the sound of the gun. I don't want to be watching. I want to be in the thick of it.
I agree.
And win or lose, I was there, and I tried. Not for myself. I'm content. I'm happy. I was that retired colonel like Blaine too, but as a retired general, leave me alone. It's time to go into silence and be retired and do whatever I do. But I got called off the bench to do whatever God calls me to do, and hopefully faithfully. And I do it because of my kids.
We are definitely grateful for your contribution, both of you gentlemen.
Thank you, Connie. And I think, you speak as a very normal person there, right there, Colonel.
For sure.
I think that's why everyone in all of us older people, I'm too old. I shouldn't be behind a screen doing things. I'm doing this for my children and their children, and for all the children of the country, all over the country, where their parents were standing up. We want to show them. I want my grandchild to know I'm one of the people that went out there and wasn't sitting on my sofa and went out there to help take this country back. And there's millions of us out there that are doing this, not just us. Millions upon millions, and we need to get more. But I also think I understand the frustration of the American people at this point. I'm frustrated. Listen, the longer it takes for whatever happened to happen, as you described, Colonel, the longer everyone is under attack fighting this battle. And it's constant, and it's hitting everybody personally, all across this nation. And it just seems like nothing is being done about it. There is no leadership right now in this country. So, I think,
Liberty, I would say
where
that
you retired people come in, and it is very, very important. Your knowledge, your expertise, and your integrity is something that the people of this country can count on, as far as I'm concerned, better than anybody who's even in office, for that matter. And I want to continue to have you gentlemen back for just that reason. We need knowledge, honesty, and integrity, and leadership. And I know we're all leaders on this panel, and there's a lot of leaders watching us today, but we need more leaders. We need more leaders to get into our community and take hold, and not be afraid of all this stuff that we kind of threw out there today for a reason. I wanted to put it out there so people could see how much it is. It's a lot. It's too much. We got to focus. We got to laser focus on what's coming in next. So,
we have a thing in my industry, that's a very safety critical industry. In my business, we do lose people, and we call it being cut in. And to me, I'm so grateful for that training that I learned really early on, that regardless of the size of the the task, of the obstacles, of whatever it is that's fighting against you, if you can stay cut in to the task at hand, whatever that first next right thing is, do that, because that's how you, before you know it, I think there was another proverb that, it starts with a stone. You move the stone out of if you're trying to move a mountain of stones, you move one away, then you move another way. It sounds tedious, but before you know it, you've got the whole mountain of stones behind you, and an awesome story to tell. This is what this country was based on. And to me, it looks like an opportunity that all of this craziness, and maybe we can end on a positive note here, is that, we are being called to action in wherever we are, in whatever way we're being called, even if it's just to look inward and to clean up your own house. I believe in the quantum effect of every time somebody aligns themselves properly, recalibrates themselves, stays cut into the task, checks off the boxes, crosses the T's, dots the I's. Every time you do that, you're actually creating an exponential effect. It's the ripple effect. So it's not just actually getting the tasks in front of you done, but it's actually creating that quantum, raising the vibration, changing the frequencies. That's when you're really changing the world. And we've seen it here in this country so many times. I think we've just been lulled into a sleep. But all of this, I mean, this is what happens. This is the nature. We've had the decadence of the 80s, right? We had the wildness of the 60s and the 70s, the decadence of the 80s and even the 90s. And so, it makes sense that, the turn of the millennia is going to be, it's going to be harder. We are finally have the opportunity to live up to our reputation. We've been riding on our reputation for a very long time as a nation. So now we have an opportunity to actually live up to that reputation and to step into that space. And I am praying that it is so diabolical that we never let this happen again. So I come from the state of mind that anything that is done to me is going to be used to my good. That's what the Bible tells me as a believer in Christ, that everything that I do or anything the enemy tries to, throw at me is going to be done for my good. Well, this is a perfect example of that. I feel a stronger America is going to come out of this. I feel like the populace is really stepping and rising to the task. We see that every time there's a Trump rally. I mean, we are in this. We are in this. We just don't get the press, but I'm telling you, we're in it, and just stay in it. And again, like I said, we may never see the freedom that we're fighting for, but it's still worth fighting for. That's just the way I feel.
Amen. But I have to, before we get out of the doom and gloom, I have to go to the general. Look, I can't be so rookie here that I don't ask you the main questions that are being asked on mainstream media.
Right.
So, General, let me just say this, and I'll give you the floor to make whatever comment you deem necessary, sir. What is people to make about you can give us a quick synopsis of the balloons that have been being talked about for days and days and days, the Russian jets coming into the airspace, and what's going on with our transportation right now. Do you think that in your opinion, do you see signs that they're trying to dismantle our transportation system to so that we can't get our goods and services where they need to go? What's your opinion on all of the above, sir? Because I don't want to seem rookie here.
Luckily,
people really want to hear this type
Liberty
of
doesn't have any
information.
difficult questions. There's no difficult.
I started off
easy coming from me. They're easy coming from me.
I was asked this morning on Newsmax, where the whole interview is going to take 4 to 5 minutes, and so you've really got to parse your words very carefully, because I had to find 2 words that would describe the entirety of this balloon nonsense and everything that's happened with it. Moreover, the communications that's come from that, and the decisions made during this hot crisis. And so I was asked this morning, what can you tell us about all these factors and facets of this? And I've got 10 seconds. And I just said, oh, sure, this is easy. It's a hot mess. That's what this is. And so now Newsmax has that as their front page, which is Blaine Holt says this is a hot mess. And it is, because it's part of this factory that produces this weakness day in, day out. We can't even get out of our own way. And now we're putting out answers to questions on surveillance balloons and potentially worse, that don't even make any sense. I mean, you don't even have to be a pilot like myself to go, well, wait a minute. You're telling me you shot this thing down in northern Alaska to get out of the way of air traffic because it was at 40,000 feet. So can you tell me how many Delta airliners go zinging past the northern side of Alaska? I'm going to tell you it's yep, Darin's got the number. It's 0. And what's troubling about this is, let's go back a bit. And this is the most troubling thing about the whole deal. If it weren't for Darin's great state of Montana and some farmers who put some binoculars up in the sky and saw a balloon and made a big deal out of it, none of us right now would know about any of these balloons whatsoever. They wanted to get together with the Chinese and have some climate change talks, and they wanted to get some agreements going. And here the party got ruined because some Montanans saw and reported. And isn't this exciting? Because this is where we, the people, ordinary Americans, have the power. It's I see it. You're going to let a balloon in here. I'm not going to let you do that. And if you do it, we're going to call it out, and we're going to force you to deal with this. And you can tell they weren't anticipating this because of their communications at the Puzzle Palace, which is really the Pentagon, or Fort Fumble over there at the White House. They all said different stuff. And so it's like, you guys weren't really ready for this. And now we're boiled down to, well, we may have fired a missile at a $13 balloon. Really? So we fired a missile at a 24-inch balloon. No, we didn't. No, that's not exactly what happened. In fact, I'm going to go to this astrophysicist who put out a YouTube video on his findings on modeling where all of the balloons came from, and they come from Northeast and Northwest China. And by the way, there was some laser light show over Hawaii looking for subs and doing some intelligence gathering there. So the big thing is, you sit there and you look at this, and here's where you're like, well, this is really bad. No, it's not. This is good, because Americans are now getting to see the lies for what they are. They're getting to see the farce that they're being told, and the media can't spackle it over anymore. Now, let's add in the transportation pieces and parts. Oh, same thing. So Ohio has the mother of all derailments. And we know that before the derailments happened, at least we know now, that Norfolk Southern had gotten new rules because they said, we've got some fancy brakes, and now we can carry all this real nasty garbage on our rail. And then the thing gets derailed. Oh my gosh, just right next to the Ohio River. I'm sorry, it's not selling. So although nobody in the mainstream press has said, has anybody looked at the potential that this was a terrorist act? Has anybody asked any reasonable questions like, I don't know, Seymour Hersh, pretty reputable journalist, just said that he's got pretty good proof that we blew up Nord Stream 1 and 2. Doesn't it look like it would be reasonable that somebody would be interested in messing with our transportation infrastructure as a result or as a response? And I'm not trying to foment the idea that, whoa, we're going to war with Russia. No, we're not. But what I am saying is, we now know instinctually our government's not being straight with us, and they don't mind getting up in front of a camera and saying whatever the heck they're going to say. But right now in Ohio, those dear people, those dear Americans, are struggling with what looks like it's probably going to end up being the United States version of Chernobyl. And we're going to see folks lose their lives. We're going to see mass disease, cancers, loss of livestock, loss of way of life. And now we see the other derailments. And then if you back it up behind the scenes, we all know about the food processing plants that have been burnt to the ground and damaged. We all know about oil and gas facilities that have been hit. And so when you can go find out for yourself that those things are happening, then go listen to the nonsense that's coming out of DC, and you're like, okay, I get it. You guys are a mess, and you're not really working for us. But this is really, as bad as it sounds, this is great news, because it means the truth is coming up. They can't hold back anymore. If you look at what they're doing on their side, whether it's the World Economic Forum, China, Russia, all these actors who they're united by one thing: they can't stand our freedom, they can't stand our Constitution. They're united on that. Well, their plan and what they've done so far, it's way too complicated, and they keep getting caught, and they keep getting exposed. And the more they get exposed, the more we get closer to what Winston Churchill said about Americans. And he said, you can always trust the Americans to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. Well, we're at the end of that. And all of this terrible stuff that we see, oh gosh, lift your hearts and be optimistic, because what this brings us is truth. What this brings us is a larger army. What this brings us is more people who understand that really that what we're being told is just nonsense, and we actually can get together, and this is what Restore Liberty is all about: connecting communities, connecting like-minded people, raising people up, bringing organizations who are already doing a great job, tapping into them and going, where can we play in? How can we get you together? Just this week alone, 2 national groups are going to make a very big difference by linking up with Restore Liberty and how we're going to all act together. And you'll see those media things come out in different ways. But it's going to amount to something that is inspiring. And so I know there's so many reasons to get down. I didn't even know about the Oregon derailment, but what I can tell you is there are so many people working the other side of this thing. I pointed it out to Darin this morning. There's this YouTube channel, a brilliant former Army intelligence officer who runs a YouTube channel called S2 Underground, which means intelligence. And he does exactly what he used to do on active duty, but he gives all of us the same quality of intelligence briefing we used to get on active duty. And he's just breaking it down, just doing his analysis and laying it all out there. And with the derailments, what I had no idea about, but he illuminated, was you've got rail defect detectors every 20 miles on every stretch of American railway. And they're all, you can tap into any of them by their VHF frequency. For all you ham radio operators out there, you can look these things up online, look at the defect detectors near you, and then you can actually tune in to what defects are being reported to the trains running on the track near your home. Now, that's important because what Pete Buttigieg and the cool kids in DC might not be aware of is, now that we know that, we can go back and go, well, was the train that was already on fire on its way to the accident, was it alerted? Was the conductor and engineer alerted via one of these detectors that, hey, you're on fire. Hey, this is what's going on. If it was, now we can really get into the investigation parts that the NTSB maybe doesn't want you to understand, because basically she got up there today or yesterday and said, you're not to talk about this. It's like, I'm sorry, I have this thing called the First Amendment right. I'll talk about it if I want to. And as a C-17 airlift pilot, I can tell you, I know, I'm going to guess a little bit more about transportation than Buttigieg does. And so this is an area where I want to scratch and keep scratching and keep scratching. I used to run logistics for the entire European theater for the Defense Department. So I think this is an amazing time. And I think right now, as we're having this discussion, we're at the turning point. We're at the tipping point. We're at the chance where we can go push this thing in the other direction. I'm excited about it.
I agree.
Yeah, I'd like to add a comparison to that, because I know we're getting down to a couple minutes left, but
take your time, Colonel.
All right, Blaine and I are
just want to let you guys go.
Oh yeah, Blaine and I are experts at finding silver linings in clouds everywhere you look.
We are.
That's awesome. I love that.
I like everything he said. Again, 100% on board with everything there. One way I like to describe this to people is, and you look at Hollywood, you look at the movies. The monsters in Hollywood movies are always easily defined and picked out. They look like, the orcs. They look like, and you can pick them. You're picturing them right now already. From Freddy Krueger to whatever that may be. The monsters in society for years have been people in three-piece suits with large bank accounts, traveling by jet to Davos and other places around the world, and working against the people of not only this country, but frankly, the entire planet, trying to create themselves as an elite set of folks, which they are clearly not. What you've got now is the evil is manifesting itself very clearly to people, and it's hard to mistake. Now, we do have to be careful about not overreacting and saying every single thing is a threat or a terrible thing. Overdoing it, which goes back to some of the be careful who you follow, listen to, and watch. But it is worth stepping back, taking a breath, looking at it all, and realizing that this kind of stuff would have just kept going anyways if it hadn't been exposed in the first place.
And to that, we owe a big, great gratitude of thank you to to Donald Trump. I mean, I'm just going to say his name. He to me, he's what started the fire. And
don't say it too many times because my channel will get a strike.
God.
Gonna be forbidden terms here.
So true.
Call him the T-Man.
Call him the T-Man. Yes. But like I tell people all the time, that is, yes, it's getting more obvious. People are waking up, and now it's time for we the people to finish the job, because he started it. He gave us back our country, but the reason why everything's upside down right now is because we are not rising to the occasion and taking our sovereignty. We have to step up into our calling. You can be the most talented person in the room, but if you don't actually get to work and do something, it's not going to do you any good. So, I mean, that's how I deal with my frustration and my disappointment and my trauma or whatever I'm dealing with in the moment. I stay busy. I tell people when Jesus comes back, I hope he finds me working, because that is what has always worked for me. And before you know it, you've got a whole thing, a whole production behind you, because you actually did the work. So it could, for me today, doing the work was just cleaning my house and getting ready for company. It doesn't matter what it is. Everything towards the goal is important. So, even if you can't get a podcast or start a YouTube channel, you can share a video, you can get in the live chat, you can start conversation, you can talk to your neighbors, you can talk to people in the grocery store, you can educate yourself, whatever the case may be. Everybody knows that's why the inner work is so important, so that you can discover what your path is. Everybody's path is different and it looks different.
Well said.
It certainly does. And everybody's at a different place and time in their journey. And I want to, before we pass it around for last comments, because we are getting up on time here. General, the only thing I want to say about the train derailment is this, again, we're dealing with the smart America. I think what people are saying, that's a great explanation and those things are possible. But people have already done the research, followed the money. You'll see who the culprits are. So that's all I'll say on that point, because we can all see who financially stands to gain from this and what this is all about. And these are not accidents. So they can do as many as investigations as they want, but the American people are already there. So this is just one more variable in everything that's coming at us right now. We want to pray for all those people who were affected by all those tragedies this week in America. We want to continue to pray for the men and women in our armed forces, active and non-active, who are out there fighting this battle on behalf of us, the American people. And we want to continue to actually pray. And we'll continue to pray for them every day. All the people who don't know where they're going yet, that they find a path and they find a way and they find a direction. But stop tearing other people down and get into the fight of this country. Let me pass it around for final thought, final word. We'll start with you, General.
Well, it's great to be with you guys and have such a deep talk. We rarely get to kind of go through the issues in a little bit deeper level than what we do on our media hits, whether it's Darin on radio and Fox or me on Newsmax and doing radio or talking across the country. I want to make sure that everybody understands the media, the mainstream media wants to keep us in little stovepipes, and they want to try to limit the amount of access we get to information. And so, in Hillary Clinton's words, we really are the deplorables for going out on our own and seeking our own communities and seeking our own information. But that's exactly what makes us strong. And that's exactly what makes us Americans. And I would tell everybody, take heart. Not only are we going to win and thrive, we're not going to be the generation that fails our founders. We're not going to be the generation that fails our grandchildren. And these are just, this is a test, but it's one that we're up for. And we're going to be fine. And I think, programs like yours make this point all the time, but you just need to keep at it and never quit. And, if you go to Timothy, that's God's guidance. God says, I'll tell you when the game is over. You keep going. and that's what we're called to do, and that's what we will do.
Yeah.
Amen, sir. Thank you. Colonel?
Same. Thank you both for having us on, and thank you both for doing what you're doing, because you're as important to this fight as anybody else out there. That's for sure. So I'm going to throw on my pastoral hat, because I did get ordained over about 12, 13 years ago now. And I think this has been an incredible ministry with Restore Liberty as well. We don't have a faith litmus test, but everybody who comes to us has a faith background and are grounded in faith. And the hope that Blaine was speaking of there as well, the hope that we would hope would guide anybody is the permanent hope in Christ.
Yes.
There is no greater hope on this planet than any of us can ever look towards. Now, we're not looking for ultimate political victory. We'll take it. We're not looking for economic victory or whatever, any other label you want. We would prefer to guide every single person we possibly can to hope in Christ and the man who is on the throne and will not be removed no matter how much Soros may try.
Woo!
It's never going to happen.
Nope.
And frankly, if Soros got saved, great. We'd
Yeah.
be as cool as anybody else.
That's how you win the war.
Keep your hope up. Know that the man who's in charge cannot be removed and he cannot lose. And if you follow God, in the end, you can't lose either. So that's ultimately the victory we're seeking.
Okay.
In the meantime, I'm not going to look for the Bible or look into the Bible for the second book of opinions that says you think it's all over. I'm just going to run to the side of the guns along with all my brothers in arms and sisters in arms and radio and wherever they may be. And thanks again for having us on.
Oh, wow. That is fantastic. I love it.
Power Girl, what are your final words?
I'm just basking in this. I just feel so honored to be here, and thank you so much for your time. And it is such a pleasure to have you here and to get this very much in depth. Thank you, Liberty, for hosting this and for insisting that I was here today. This is such an enriching thing, and I just want to point out that we are creating the blueprint. This is now in the record. This is now history. We are making history. And every time we do this, every time you gentlemen, grace us with your presence, we get wiser, we get stronger, and we get closer to the goal. So, I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank you, Liberty, for having me come. And thanks, guys. I mean, gosh, I hope you show up, especially after all these hard questions. I hope you come back.
Thank you. We'd be honored to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, I'm going to have you guys on the regular because I got the 411 to your phones now. So
this was powerful.
And
I want to say one last thing, Liberty. Colonel said it. Darin said it. The true freedom is in Christ. That freedom nobody can take from you, and you don't have to fight for it. All you have to do is ask for it. So that's really powerful. I love that.
Amen. Amen. Well, first, before I get into my thank yous, I just want to point out a few people and thank a few people here tonight. Cindy, nice to see you again. We've been praying for you. Thanks for coming. Deborah, thanks for showing up. I think I've seen Chase, Patriot Starfighter. Love you. Love all you people. Thanks for all your support. D-Dog, I see you in the house tonight. Thank you, sir. And anyone else that I might have missed out there, listen, we're going to keep moving. Now you've been exposed to In the Spotlight, Colonel. You can see it's a little tougher than the Liberty Lounge and where we just do promotion. But I want to have you gentlemen back. I think it's very important that you come into people in the heartland. I really am so impressed at the fact that you guys are taking on smaller channels and relating to everybody.
Absolutely.
The fact that you guys are out there on the mainstream media, but took time out of your very valuable schedules and your days and your families to come over here for a chit chat with the American people, man, just really speaks volumes about who you are as individuals. So
we need it. We need it
from the bottom of my heart. And I want to have you back as often as you can come back. And especially as things start to transpire, I expect expect, General, that the conversations will probably get a little more difficult, and we're going to need your guidance. So
We'll get after
I
it.
want you both to come back. I want everybody to go find you at restore-liberty.org. Very, very important. We're going to link that to our community page and to the comments today. Power Girl, promo your shows real quick. I'll do my last two and then we'll close it out. You got Freedom Fridays.
I got Freedom Fridays on Friday. We are absolutely tearing it up. People are loving Freedom Friday, and we're talking about all of this stuff. We're all about we the people. We're going to set a fire in the minds of men. That's what we're trying to do on Freedom Friday. Supernatural Sunday, we're talking same bat channel. Or actually, we're doing it at 7 o'clock on Sunday night at California time. And Freedom Friday is 3 p.m. Pacific time. But a Supernatural Sunday, we're exploring, the supernatural war that we are all dealing with on a daily basis. We do with the micro, we deal with the macro. We're just starting to talk about these conversations. And most importantly, keeper of the flame on Rumble. I'm finally telling my Pacific Gas and Electric story and everything that I learned fighting for freedom in the halls of Rothschild Inc. So I would definitely check that out. I am, as a subject matter expert, talking about, we're talking about all these transportation issues that we talked about, the degradation of the workforce and work ethic and all of these things that we've seen specifically over the last 3 years. I'm going to be diving really, really deep from an expert point of view, from a safety point of view, and from an energy delivery point of view. So if you're interested in that story, you want to arm yourself as a ratepayer, arm yourself as an energy customer, stop on by Keeper of the Flame on Rumble, and we will be looking into those subjects. That's me.
Awesome. And I love that new Supernatural Sunday, man. That was an awesome show. I can't wait to see that again.
We're not just talking about the supernatural. We're arming you to deal with it. We're teaching you how to deal with it, not just talking about it and spectating about it. We're actually going to teach you how to fight it.
Awesome. I encourage everybody to tune into that. You can follow Liberty Cowgirl, Liberty Cowgirl Network on YouTube, at Liberty Cowgirl on Getter, and a special shout out to my Getter family. Thank you everyone over at Getter who's been supporting Liberty Cowgirl since the very beginning. Everybody over on Rumble, we're live on Rumble now, people. We're happy about that, and we'll keep them coming. And in the words of a great warrior that I know, if you're not out there doing something to service this country, then what are you doing? When you sit down with warriors, it's a different conversation. Mm-hmm. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.